and my picture was there. We landed and there was a target behind my picture, and it says this man should be killed. But they are talking about executing me or killing me. And these are not only Orthodox Jews, these are also liberal Jews. Not only don't want to be associated with Zionism, they want to struggle against Zionism. Jews, whether they are very religious or less religious, it doesn't matter. If they have humanity in them, they cannot be against the Palestinians. Whatever I knew about 48 through the Zionist education system was not true. The Zionist project would come to an end.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Pulse 48, the Palestinian podcast where we dive into everything related to Palestine, because Palestine is so much more than a war zone. It's an honor for us today to have a special guest, professor and author Ilan Pappe. Welcome to the show.
Very glad to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Ilan Pappe is an Israeli author that have wrote over 20 books, and one of the very well-known books is The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. This isn't something that we see every day. A Jewish author that is born in Haifa, 1954.
That's correct.
And one of your very well-known book is this book. How come from being an Israeli supporter to anti-Zionism and write such a book?
Yeah. Well, it's a long journey. It doesn't happen in a day because you are brought up in a certain ideological environment. You are educated to believe in the Zionist ideal. And in order to challenge it, you need to find your own way into information about the past, about the present. I think what worked for me was the fact that I was always interested in history from a very young age. I loved history, and I started to look at the history through documents, archives, talking to people. And the history I was brought up upon, the one I heard at home, in school, even in university, did not fit the history that I was finding out. And I began to work as a professional historian through the universities with a particular interest.
In Haifa.
First of all, in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem. And then I continued my studies in England. And when I reached the level of a doctorate, I began to more seriously look into 1948. I knew it was an important year. And the documents I found have totally changed my point of view about the past. And from then on, the more I looked into the past and the present, I began to challenge the very education that I received. And the book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, that came out in 2006 was already after the journey was completed. Because I was already convinced that whatever I knew about 48 through the Zionist education system was not true. And I had to retell the story to myself. And the story fitted very well what I know Palestinians knew about that past. So what we call the narrative, the Palestinian narrative. And that is always a journey, because you have your own, education, and then you have the truth. What happens when your education contradicts, or the truth contradicts your education, right? It's a struggle. So it takes time, but by the time I published the book, I was already fully convinced that I knew what happened in 48 and what were the implications of what happened in 1948 for our time.
In what age did you start finding out that the history didn't fit the reality that you saw?
Well, I think what happens is a typical Israeli education is that you go to high school. At the age of 18, you finish high school. Then you immediately go to the army. You have to. It's conscription. and you leave the army after 3 years, like at 21. And when I was 22 years old, I was already in the university in Jerusalem. For the first time, I met Palestinians.
Okay, so
For 22 years, I was.
you
I mean,
didn't
I
meet
knew
any
there were.
Palestinian,
I knew there were Arabs.
but you
I
didn't
was
have a
born in
connection
Haifa.
with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was born in Haifa. Haifa was a mixed city,
Okay.
but you don't come in contact.
Okay.
The university is the first place in Israel where at least you can meet Palestinian students. You don't meet them in high school. And so I would say in the early 20s, I began to question the whole education. But I think it was important for me to go out to do my doctorate in England. Because what you see from the outside, sometimes you can see better from the outside what you cannot see from the inside.
So you
know?
don't need to stay in your bubble. When you go
Exactly.
outside, you see a different view of
A
it.
different view. And you meet Palestinians and Arab scholars who are not under the occupation,
Okay.
who are not under the oppression. They are more free to speak in England or wherever. And you even learn more about Palestine and the Palestinians and the Arab world, which was not easy to do it inside the very indoctrinated educational system of Israel. Yeah.
So basically, it all started after that you was done with the army and went to
Absolutely.
England. How was the reaction from the Arabs or Palestinians in England when they knew you're born in Haifa and you come from a Jewish family, and now you're talking with them about in a different view?
Yeah.
Of what you
I
learned?
think you need to earn the confidence of people because they're a bit suspicious at the beginning.
Yeah.
How come? Why are you changing your mind? So I think this is a process by which you build friendships, and on the basis of friendship, you begin to know each other, and people begin to trust you. You trust people. So I would say the first reaction was a bit suspicious.
Okay.
Then there was, I think, a recognition that actually it's important to have Israeli Jews historians saying that the Palestinian version is the correct one. So they saw also the value of such a development. And then, of course, you begin to be totally involved in the Palestinian National Liberation Movement and so on. And that's another stage. That's a stage where you are part of the struggle. But it doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't. And people have to. I remember people were a bit worried who did the same journey. Why don't the Palestinians receive us with, open arms? And I said, because we are not there. We're not doing it for them. We're first of all doing it for ourselves, and we don't have to expect gratitude.
Can you say so? You don't live in a lie. Can you?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you put
exactly.
that words on it?
First of all, you want to be true to yourself, and I think the people feel the moment when you have done it, and then they believe you, and then they trust you, and I think it's very important to build the trust, to build the confidence, and yes, I think this was, as I say, all these things in life don't happen in a day. You have to be patient. You have to, you have to understand that it's not easy for people to accept. And looking back, of course, I don't regret any of it. Of course.
So you don't regret where you come today.
Oh no, not at all.
But what was the first big struggle or conflict that you remember that happened to you from a friend, from family, from work, because you change your view or you start seeing it from another view than what you learned?
I remember the first. It's when I was still. I mean, I went to do a doctorate in England, but I came back to teach in Israel, in Haifa,
Okay.
my hometown. I studied in Jerusalem, but I went back. So my first position as a lecturer was in Haifa University.
Okay.
I was 26, 27 years old.
You started young.
Yeah, started very young. Yeah, I did quickly the
Upgrade.
the doctorate. And at first, I was treated as an important contribution because I came from a very prestigious university, University of Oxford. But I remember the first time when I started talking openly of what I found as an historian about the Nakba in 1948, about the Israeli policies after 1948, when I was called to the university president and authorities who said to me, you cannot say these things. And I was very naive. I said to them, but this is a university. You cannot tell me what to say, right? Or what to teach. And then slowly they began to say, if you continue like this, you will be a traitor to the country, to your colleagues. And it took time before they decided that it's too much to allow me to teach and to talk about it, because I was a very popular lecturer. The students liked my lectures and they came in large numbers. And I think that made them very worried.
Both Arabs and Israelis?
Both Arabs and Israelis. Even Israeli Jews who did not like what I said, they liked to hear me and to talk to me. And I allowed them to debate me. You know, I didn't shut them out.
So they didn't like maybe what you said, but they liked how you...
The way I presented, yes. As someone said to me, you do it in a nice way so we can... And I was influencing students. There's no doubt. I was influencing. I know from the kind of letters I got afterwards. So they were right. I was doing a good job, and that's when it became too much. I think you have to remember the 1990s, because of the Oslo Agreement. For a few years there was a sense that maybe there's the beginning of peace between the PLO and Israel. Of course, we know it was all not working, but we know it now. But in the early, 95, 96, people were saying maybe there's a chance for some sort of a dialogue with the Palestinians. So people like me were more tolerated. Because the idea was we are in a period of peace negotiations. I think the turning point was the Second Intifada.
Turning point against you as a person.
Against me. Because I became totally, I completed my own journey in 2000. That's when I started to write the ethnic cleansing in 2000.
And you were still in Haifa that time?
I was still in Haifa. Yeah, so and I said, and that was when not only the university, but also the government began to target me. You know, I remember...
What age did it start that you got, they were targeting you?
2000, so I was, I don't know, you do the arithmetics. I'm not good.
Between 40 and 50.
45 years. All I remember, I went with my children to a short vacation. I remember we came back to the airport, Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. And in those days, they had a lot of TV, like we have here, TV screens. And my picture was there. We landed and there was a target behind my picture. And it says, this man should be killed. Should be...
at the airport?
At the airport. And I remember seeing it. I didn't understand why. Apparently,
you have the Israeli citizenship.
Yeah.
You live there. You are born there.
But they are talking about executing me or killing me. And the reason was that when I was abroad, I gave a talk or an interview. I don't remember. Maybe with Le Monde and some newspapers. And I said, Israel has to be boycotted because of its treatment. And I talked about there was the first time I used the term ethnic cleansing about Palestine. So that was too much.
The interview was in England?
In England, in France. I gave few outside of Israel. But they caught it. They knew it. And this is when the personal attack began. So it was not just the university professors and so on. This was the Ministry of Education and then they said I'm not allowed to talk in schools, and there was a big pressure on me to leave Haifa, which eventually I did. Yeah.
But it's actually an interesting story. I didn't know
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it. I haven't heard it in another interview. When you arrived to the airport, you saw your photo there. How was the welcoming back home for you?
Very difficult, because people in the street were you suddenly become a public face, so people know who you are, and you get then a lot of death threats became we got a lot of death threats.
You and your family.
Yeah, my family. It was a very difficult period. I mean, nothing compared to what Palestinians suffer, of course, but it was not easy. It was not easy. I remember this was 2000 to 2002, 2003. For 3 years. I mean, after 3 years, they leave you because they have other enemies.
Okay.
Luckily, you are never the news all the time.
Okay.
But there was a difficult period. But for me, it came in the right moment, because I was totally convinced that I understand. Finally, I understand what I'm dealing with, I was naive. I still thought in 2000 I can work with a lot of friends. We had to change the Israeli position from within.
Work with Israelis to change.
To change.
Okay.
I really thought it was still possible.
Okay.
Afterwards, I understood that's not going to work. You have to totally work from the outside. It's very difficult. I still hope to work from the inside. I work from the inside, but I don't see much chance of changing changing the Israeli Jewish position.
So you can still visit.
I can,
Haifa?
yeah. I still have citizenship. Nobody canceled my. This can change, of course, but they haven't. But I cannot teach. I cannot work. I'm glad that I still can go in, because the community that really helped me to go through the difficult time was the Palestinian community in Israel, what we call 48 Arab Samani wa
48,
40 Arab. I think a lot of people don't know about this community enough. They live in a very different situation.
Like
than,
in Akka.
exactly. It's not the West Bank. It's not the Gaza Strip. It's not the Shatat. It's a different kind of life. And I was lucky.
Palestinians that have Israeli citizenship.
They have Israeli citizenship.
Yeah.
You go around the Arab world, people don't understand how it's possible. But we know the history. And they were the society that kept me alive, because they were supporting me, defending me. This is now my society inside Israel. I live very near the Palestinian, inside the Palestinian community. I feel part of it. And I'm glad I can go back, because people forget about them. There are 2 million Palestinian citizens. And I think they will have to be part of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in the future, because they can play a very important part in the future. They're probably the only Palestinians who know the Israelis not only as settlers and soldiers, So I'm glad that I can do it, especially for that kind of community.
But do you have both people that not like you, but accept you, let's say, from the Palestinian community in Palestine, and at the same time people that still can't believe an Israeli author that is born in Haifa that is working as pro-Palestine, basically.
Yeah. But I'm not the only one. And I think now Palestinians understand it, that there is a group of anti-Zionist Jews, whether they are in Israel or outside of Israel, and that they are an important part of the solidarity movement with the Palestinians. The numbers is not big, but there is more than one. Even in Israel itself, there's more than one.
Yeah, we have seen it more now.
And now we will see, and we will see more and more. We will see more.
Especially Orthodox Jews, we see them a lot.
Exactly.
Even in England, in New York.
But not only, if you go to the United States and you went to the encampments, in the campuses, they build this tents and camps in support. The number of young Jews was very high. And these are not only Orthodox Jews. These are also liberal Jews who not only don't want to be associated with Zionism, they want to struggle against Zionism with the Palestinians. This is a new thing.
We see it even in Denmark and in
Yeah,
Sweden, Jews for
absolutely.
justice, Jews for Palestine, with Palestine, etc. There's many
Yeah,
different
and there's a
groups.
movement called Tzedek, which is another group of Jews in France and Belgium that are together are part of the solidarity movement with the Palestinians. Now, this will continue because Judaism as a religion has nothing against the Palestinians. Zionism as an ideology is against the Palestinians, but not the Jewish religion, you know. And I think that's why Jews, whether they are very religious or less religious, it doesn't matter. They are, if they have humanity in them, they cannot be against the Palestinians. They can only be in support of the Palestinian struggle.
You have been met by different challenges, and one of them is that you mentioned when you went to the airport and you saw your photo that you was a target. A specific situation like this, would it let you at that time regret what you are doing, or did you come to any specific situation that made you regret at that time? Because you mentioned now you don't regret what you where you are today, where you is today. But at that time,
no, I think that you need first to be at peace with yourself. You have to do the internal journey, and already. No, I was worried about my children who were very young and the family, but I was not regretting even then because you have to remember I got to the point where I did not just because of moral conviction or ideological values, but also because of my own research. I was already a professional historian. And the facts, the truth, was so powerful for me, you know, that I could not, if I would have decided to change again, like some of my colleagues in New History did, I would lie to myself because I knew the truth. So no, I don't think there was a moment where I regretted it. I just was. It took me time to understand. It took me time to understand that the society would not like it. I was naive. I really thought that people would say, okay, we didn't know, you know, tell us more.
Okay.
But this is not how they react.
That's not the reality that you got.
This is not what they wanted to do. Although I have to tell you a story which is interesting. In 2000, because of the pressure, we moved, the family moved to another place. And in this new place, there was a lot of, they had a local newspaper that said, do you know this terrible man, Ilan, is now arriving in our neighborhood.
Okay.
So we said, what do we do? I mean, that's not a good start, right? So my wife said, let's publish in this newspaper an invitation for people to come to meet you. Because she said to me, people would meet you, they will be less frightened by you. So we said you can come to meet Ilan and see for yourself. What does he think? 50 people came to my living room, and they stayed
at your home.
My home.
The invitation was to your home.
Yeah, to my home.
Area, basically.
Exactly. And then they stayed for 2 years. Every week they came for a lecture of an hour because they began. And I think I really convinced them that I have something to say. And one of my sons said to me, you can be optimistic. I said, why? He said, I calculated. It took you 2 years to change the mind of 50 people. All you need is 550 years, and you can change the Israeli point of view.
So we don't live that long, but
no.
We hope that every person that you learn, they will
influences another 50 people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like how the pyramid goes.
Exactly. Yeah.
You already answered a question that they wanted to ask if you changed a view of other Jewish Israeli people. You already did that, and you mentioned it. But did you get more friends or enemies?
No, more enemies, unfortunately. People don't understand, you know, Israel is, in places like Sweden and Denmark, Israel was able to portray itself as the only democracy in the Middle East. And people here, when they think about democracy, they think it's an open society where people can exchange views and so on. This is so far from the truth. I mean, Israeli society is very indoctrinated, very closed. Any attempt to challenge the Zionist ideology is treated as treason. You're a traitor if you do that. And because of that, the society treats people like us immediately as traitors, not as people who don't agree, you know, and therefore, the more convinced you are and the more vocal you are, the more enemies you have. But the lucky thing for people like us, the moment we go out of Israel today, compared to the 1970s and 1980s, a lot of people, many more people are pro-Palestinians than they were. I remember, I came to America in 1983, and already in 1983 I was in the middle of my doctorate, and I didn't even define myself as an anti-Zionist yet in 1983. But I was talking about what happened in 1948, and it was impossible to talk like this in America. People said, no, you're supporting terrorism, and so on. Just because I said that I'm beginning to find in the archives evidence that Palestinians were forcefully expelled. That's all I said. I didn't say change Zionism. And I just said the evidence is that Israel expelled Palestinians. Didn't even say ethnic cleansing yet. It was impossible. So things have changed. You can now say in America, yeah.
You mentioned that it changed in America, that now you can say more than what you could in the 90s. Do you find it at the same even now after the last 2 years, since they banned some chants, Palestinian chants, etc.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, you can be called for anti-Zionist.
That's right.
Even with these days where we are today, do you still find it changed? It's more open?
It's more open, but we have to see what would be the impact of the Trump administration. I'm very worried that he would allow the pro-Israeli lobby to come down on the freedom of expression in the American campuses. So it can change.
Yeah.
But until the election, or until he enters the White House in the next few days, the situation in the campuses was better than compared to the past. Most of the students, a lot of the faculty are pro-Palestinians, and therefore it was easier to talk about Palestine. I think because it was such a success, the pro-Israeli lobby is fighting now with all its power against it. And there will be maybe some success for this lobby. But, I always say to young people, I'm 70 years old, struggles are not always success. You have a moment of failure, and then you have a moment of success. You cannot judge the future by a certain setback, not setup, sorry, setback. And I think there might be a setback now in America because of Trump. But it will not change the direction of history. The direction of history is that many more people in the world are pro-Palestinians than are pro-Israelis. And this was not the case in 67. This was not the case in 77. I know that it's frustrating for people in Palestine. If you tell them this, they say, what does it help us? Because the occupation, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing continues. And I said, you're right. It means that it's not enough that so many people in the world support you. We need to translate this support to an effective power. Otherwise, it's very nice that you have all this support, but it doesn't affect the life of Palestinians on the ground. But it's a positive development, nonetheless. Yeah.
It need to affect more, or it need to affect basically the Palestinian people, the Palestinian power. But do you think all events that is happening around Europe, from protests to conference, how much does it do for impact for us? How much does it give impact to the people? And what is a specific impact that need to be added to this kind of events to make some change, real change?
The best way to describe is to think about two global alliances. You have global Israel. Global Israel are all these actors in the world that, for different reasons, sometimes even contradictory reasons, think that supporting Israel or allowing Israel to do what it does serves their own interests. It can be even anti-Semitic right-wing people in Europe who don't want to see the Jews in Europe but prefer to see them in Palestine. It could be capitalist interests that think that Israel is bringing them financial benefits. It could be Christian fundamentalists who believe that a Jewish state is the fulfillment of a religious program. It could be just Islamophobic and racist people, multinational corporation, military industry, security industry, and cynical politics, politicians who believe that it will serve them. You can see it in Denmark, that it will serve them well to be pro-Israeli. But you have also global Palestine, not just global Israel. Global Palestine are all these people in the world who believe that their own struggle against injustice is connected to the struggle against injustice in Palestine. The biggest success of global Palestine was what happened in the ICG and ICC, the ICJ, ICJ and ICC, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. You could see that the two courts were representing the global Palestine alliance. A lot of countries from the global south, but not only. A lot of people, civil societies in the West as well. Now, what is missing is how to turn global Palestine to a powerful counterforce. Solidarity is not enough. Sympathy is not enough.
But it's still important.
It is very important. We need to find a way to translate this wide support into action from above. And for that, this global Palestine has to be more pragmatic. I don't think they are pragmatic enough. What I mean by this, they think, oh, we cannot collaborate with these, they are conservatives, or this is not important now. What is important is to have a strong alliance to save Palestine. Then you can go back to your argument. But this is what the global Israel does very well. If you think about the people who are part of the alliance that supports Israel, they have a lot of contradictions.
They are divided, but on this
but for that particular purpose, they know how to work together. And I think we need to do the same in order to translate this huge international support and this is urgent because the genocide in Gaza is continuing and Israel has plans for the West Bank. It has plans for the 48 Arabs. We see what it's doing in Syria. We see what they do in south of Lebanon. This is very dangerous project that is not being confronted properly. And for that, you need an strong international alliance. I'm not talking about the region. The Arab world, that's another this thing. Is not a nice topic.
We have already seen, in general, that people are getting more together, even if they have different opinions on many things. They are getting together, especially in the protests.
Absolutely.
All around the world.
That's a good model.
Especially Europe. You see, before you could see more and more, before all days, people that have family in Palestine. But now, no. You see people from all around the world joining this protest because they say what is happening is a genocide. It's injustice.
Exactly. I think that's very important. The alliance that we can see in the protests. I was in the 1 million demonstration in London. You had people who came from very religious groups of Islamic communities, very people in the extreme left, people from the Conservative Party, from the Labour Party, people with different worldviews,
Yeah.
but it was 1 million because they all felt the same about Palestine. We need to take that alliance and make it a political alliance, not just an alliance for a demonstration. We need it as a political alliance. A political alliance like this can change the government's policies towards Israel. And I don't think, and I have a lot of respect for the Palestinian resistance and national movement, but I don't think you can change the reality of Palestine just through the Palestinians. They're not powerful enough to do this. You need the international community behind you. And there's no reason that the international community will not support eventually
It's a
a free
worldwide
Palestine.
cause. It's a worldwide cause.
Exactly. I mean, the Palestinians are not asking to do to the Israelis what the Israelis did to them. They're asking for equality, freedom, right of return. These are all human rights enshrined, basic human rights. That's what they want. And they want what normal people have around the world. Not more, no less. And that should be a cause that should be supported by even cynical and powerful politicians. Yeah.
Last question now. What would you mention to European people that have just started getting the knowledge and being active with Palestine for the last 1 or 2 years? Before, they didn't know what was going on in the world or specific in the Middle East. But now they're starting getting the knowledge. They know what's happening there, but they don't know maybe more than what's happening in Gaza. How much can each person, each individual do for change? Maybe they say it's better late than never.
Yeah.
They're starting going on the right way. But what can each person do, even if they are not political?
Yeah. I think it's very important for Europeans to learn a bit more about the role Europe played in this Palestinian tragedy and catastrophe. Europeans don't understand how responsible Europe is for what's happening to the Palestinians. And that's one thing that they can talk to with their societies. And I think that that's an important conversation Europe doesn't have yet. What is the European responsibility for the genocide in Gaza? And it doesn't start on the 7th of October. The responsibility goes back, 70, 80 years before. Secondly, I think it's very important for people to understand that there is a connection to the way politics is being done in their own countries in Europe and the question of Palestine. The more honorable, the more moral, the more just politics would be in Europe, the more Europe would be involved in a good way in what happens in Palestine. The more corrupted and cynical and less caring the political system in Denmark or in Europe would be, or in Sweden, Israel would benefit from it. So I think people should work with the assumption that they're not just working for Palestine, they're working for a better world. They're working for a better political system. And that Palestine represents everything that is wrong with politics, but also the hope for a very different kind of politics. And I think that should make them understand that they are not just fighting for you as a Palestinians, they're also fighting for themselves and their children and their grandchildren to live in a world. We should not give up on our world. I mean, people say to me, this is the world, cynical politicians, big financial companies, people would be poor, the global warming would not be stopped.
There's nothing. You're giving up before even trying.
Exactly. And I said, no, I'm sorry. That means you think all human beings are stupid, all human beings are immoral, all human beings cannot believe in a better world. I don't see it in history, and I don't think it's true about today. Yeah.
Do you see a near end of the over 100 year of injustice, occupation?
I see the beginning of it. I see the beginning. Now, you have to be careful when historians say the beginning of, it's a long period.
Okay.
I don't think it's a question of if the Zionist project would come to an end. It's not a question of if. It is a question of when. I cannot talk about the when because I don't know. But I can say, I'm very confident it's not a question of if. It will come to an end. It will come to an end, and Palestinians would have a better future. But I'm afraid we have to find a way of shortening the period before it happens. And what is very important, we have to think about the day after, not the way the Americans are talking about the day after. We have to think about the day after, because decolonization can lead to not always to a good alternative. We need to think now about what do we want instead of what we have now. We know that what we have now is an apartheid state that carries genocide in Gaza, ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, terrifies the whole area. We want something different.
Exactly.
What exactly do we want? And we don't have to agree about everything, but I think it's important to tell the world that ideas like a two-state solution are not relevant anymore. So we want a free. What do we mean by a free Palestine? So that people are not frightened. People here say free Palestine. Oh, I don't know how it is in Sweden or Denmark. In England, you are not allowed to say it.
You mean when you're not allowed to say free Palestine, or from the river to
from
the
the
sea?
river to the sea, Palestine should be free. You're not allowed to say.
Okay.
It's like you and I think we need to explain to people what we mean by this and why it is ridiculous to say to us that if we say this we are supporters of terrorism. It's crazy. But apparently we need to do a lot of education, and we have a lot of work to do.
What do we mean when we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free?
I think what we mean is a normal, natural life to everyone who lived there and everyone who was expelled from there. We want, and whatever people have in Sweden and Denmark, we want them to have it in Palestine. That's the whole idea of a free Palestine. It's not a project of destruction. It's not a project of violence. It's a project of decolonization that, if the Jews were clever enough, would understand that it's good for them as well. It's a win-win for everyone. Palestine is part of the Arab world. It's part of the Muslim world. And it will return to be part of the Arab world and the Muslim world. And this is something they should understand and not regard as a negative scenario, but as a positive scenario. But apparently we still, a lot of people even good people are afraid of this idea. So it means that we are not explaining it good enough. But I think we're getting there.
So we need to explain more and more to people.
Yeah.
So everything should be clear for them, and do not be afraid to ask about freedom for everyone, to live equal as each person should do.
Exactly.
It was a really interesting and an honor for us to have you here today.
Thank you.
Professor Ilan Pappe. And I appreciate that you joined us today.
Thank you. A great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.